Hasan Piker talks about what is actually the 83rd school shooting of the year here in America. Posted this a couple of days ago. It's hard stuff to talk about, but, you know, Hasan does it right. Let's take a listen, and then I want to ask what you think about it in the comments.
Earlier today, at least 2 people were killed and multiple others were injured after a shooting in a school in Madison, Wisconsin. This is a private Christian school. The suspected shooter is also dead, according to Madison Police Chief Sean Barnes. The suspected shooter is speculated to be 17 years old and a female. This is what was confirmed by CNN. It is the 83rd school shooting of 2024, surpassing 2023 for the most school shootings in a single year since CNN began tracking such shootings in 2008. Victims were a teacher and a student that were killed. 6 other people were injured, including 2 students who are in critical condition. The suspected shooter was found dead in the building when police arrived, according to Barnes. The juvenile was a student at the school, he said, adding that the police department did not fire their weapons. Police declined to provide any other identifying details about the suspected shooter, but one law enforcement source told CNN that the person was a female. Police are working to determine a motive, and a suspect's family is cooperating, according to Barnes. The gun used was a 9mm pistol, according to law enforcement source. Joe Biden has been briefed, and a candlelight vigil is set for Tuesday evening in Madison. Joe Biden has also pledged federal support for victims and families affected by the school shooting in Madison. Now, while there are agencies providing resources, the underlying problem still very much persists. The underlying problem still very much exists. And that is ready availability, mass consumption of an unrestricted amount of weapons in the United States of America. This is precisely the reason why the lack of gun safety measures, the lack of gun regulation in this country has caused this massive problem. And that's the reason why, despite the fact that other OECD nations have comparable levels of mental health complications within their own respective publics, America seemingly is the only country where this kind of gun violence occurs. Obviously, mass shootings or school shootings are simply the tip of the iceberg, and it is a microcosm of a much larger problem. Approximately half the gun violence that occurs in the United States of America actually happen with people shooting themselves in the head. And of course, there are numerous studies conducted on gun-owning households that show time and time again that having a gun in your house does not increase the likelihood that you will use the gun in self-defense, but instead increases the likelihood that you will use the gun on accident with an accidental discharge and end up harming yourself or others with the gun. I live close to the school and already hearing from parents is because of anti-Christian propaganda. Do you think the right will run, considering it's rare? I mean, any argument in the immediate aftermath of yet another school shooting that hyper focuses on the background of the shooter, the mentality of the shooter, mental health, or potentially like the ideological reasons as to why they did this, which they will do, and Republicans do it all the time, even if the shooter is a Republican, and in most cases it is. Any argument that does not obviously point to the real problem here, which is mass availability of guns, is a simple distraction. Alex Jones of the left, we're never getting gun regulation. There has to be another way. Alex Jones of the left, lol. Yeah. I'm an Alex Jonesian type of person because I believe that in spite of the many hurdles that I will never cease to advocate for what I believe is correct. And in this circumstance, it's actually what I believe is correct is has been implemented in so many other countries. Leftist Alex Jones be like harassing politicians that are responsible for so much violence in American society instead of the parents of dead children in the aftermath of a school shooting.
1 week before Christmas, a young student has been killed. A teacher has been killed. How will Madison, Wisconsin even begin to deal with this horrific day? An area leader will join us next.
Dude, this is wild stuff. I swear. It's always like, it's just so commonplace. It's just so commonplace at this point where it's like we have streamlined the coverage. We have streamlined the coverage immediately. First of all, never let a good crisis go to waste. Okay, that's number one. What do I mean by this? Now we have like additional industries tasked with, designed with the purpose of extracting some kind of profit out of tragedies like this.
Wow, that is really, really shocking, because when you stop and think about it, it's true.
Where we now have like gun violence, school shooting, gun violence related trauma experts. You know what I mean? You have like businesses dedicated to hardening schools because they're soft targets as it stands currently. It's kind of crazy. Like the one thing that keeps spinning is the wheels of capital. No matter what happens, there's like endless tragedies, and yet we always seemingly find a reasonable market solution. And that doesn't mean that we're actually eliminating the problem. It's never about eliminating the problem. It's about trying to triage and I guess like stop the bleeding by, making more money. Yeah, one man's tragedy is another man's opportunity. Dog, this argument that you're making, why should my rights be restricted argument you're making can be made for any rule, any rule, any restriction, any regulation. You understand that, right? You don't have a right to own a gun. That is ridiculous. The assertion that you have some God-given right to own a weapon is already a faulty premise to start at. What you're quite literally, like, you sound like an NRA lobbyist, card-carrying leftist in the chat.
The three words from the Constitution that you never hear gun advocates say is well-regulated militia.
Talking like the dumbest sovereign citizen you ever encountered. It's so funny to be like, whoa, what the fuck? Like, why are my rights being infringed on? Because this addresses a symptom and not the root cause of the problem. First of all, it is the root cause of the problem. Anyone that tells you that guns are not the root cause of gun violence as a problem is wrong. Secondly, every rule and restriction technically infringes on your liberties to do something stupid. Here are people in the 80s reacting to DUI laws.
Drinking and driving here is viewed by some as downright undemocratic.
It's kind of getting common is when a fella can't put in a hard day's work, put in 11, 12 hours a day, and then get in your truck and at least drink 1 or 2 beers.
They're making it laws where you can't drink when you want to. You have to wear a seatbelt when you're driving. And pretty soon we're going to be calling this country.
It's so crazy. It's just nutty. I don't know. As a Wisconsinite, I still agree with them in that video. No, I know. Yeah, what about my rights to drink and drive as a woman? Gun violence statistic map. Guys, you're about to find out something incredibly shocking. States where there are less restrictions on access to guns have significantly higher gun violence rates. The one exception to this rule is Washington, D.C. And even then, it's usually proximity to other states where you can get guns with ease. You know this map. You've seen this map. I've shown this map many times over. DC is the one exception to the rule. Outside of that, virtually every single state, Mississippi, Louisiana, New Mexico, Alabama, Missouri, Montana, Alaska, Arkansas, South Carolina, Tennessee, Wyoming. I've skipped DC. Wyoming, Arizona, Oklahoma, Georgia, Nevada, Kentucky, Indiana, Colorado, Idaho, Kansas, North Carolina, North Dakota, West Virginia, South Dakota, Ohio, Texas, Michigan, Virginia. Poverty also has to do with it. Certainly. Do we know how socioeconomic status may confound these statistics? Yes, poverty plays a major role in this. Of course it does. It plays a major role in everything. But it's kind of like this. Americans used to say, why should I get vaccinated? That's just for obese people that could die from COVID. In a country where there is a 60% obesity metric, that means most Americans are obese. They need to get vaccinated. You can't fantasize about a country that we are not. You have to write rules and restrictions and regulations about a country that we are. I've noticed so many people trying to redistribute the blame. It's guns, people. Guns are the common denominator. I know. And there are so many studies that point to this. It's one of those things that frequently loops back to the same problem that I constantly yell about. It is a lack of interest in identifying, critically thinking about anything, identifying what the actual problem is, looking at the common denominator, isolating it, and trying to tackle the problem head on. And when you don't actually do that, you just end up believing in a whole bunch of different conspiratorial things. It's a self-propagating issue, though. I only own a gun because I feel like so many insane right-wingers around me are going to get violent. I know. It's great. Everybody has a gun. Abundant Life Christian school officials asked for prayers on Facebook after the shooting. It's like saying Christianity caused this problem because it was a private Christian school. You know what I mean? I would never make that argument. The only confirmation that has come so far is that the Madison school shooter was a female, law enforcement official says. The suspect, who was a teenage student at the school, is also dead. No names have been released so far. I repeat what I said when the Nashville school shooting happened. It literally doesn't matter. While the overwhelming majority of shooters are white men, for the most part, it still does not change the dynamic. It's America. Inevitably, people from every kind of background will probably engage in a mass shooting. And the reason for that is because the United States of America is an incredibly violent culture, has an incredibly violent culture, but more importantly than that, no access to mental health. But more importantly than that, last but not least,
They harp on, oh, this isn't a gun issue, it's a mental health issue. But mental health access in this country sucks.
Perhaps the most significant, has a ton of weapons readily available. It's happened before too. Female mass shooters are very rare, but it has happened in the past. Why don't we address the mental health, the feelings of isolation, the lack of free public spaces, and economic problems? Great question, chatter, who keeps saying, why should my rights be restricted when it only addresses a symptom, not the problem? Great question from the chatter, the NRA lobbyist in the chat that is advocating for less gun control or no gun control, while simultaneously saying, well, why don't we just advocate? Why don't we fix all the other problems? I don't disagree with you. I think we should fix all those other problems as well, which is why I advocate for those other problems every day of the week, including today. The issue here is, even if you were to solve many of these issues, there would still be a ton of gun violence, a ton more gun violence in the United States of America. You want to know why? Including suicides, for example. You want to know why? Because there's a ton of guns. That's it. It's that simple. It's so funny when people go, oh, dude, why don't we address the underlying material problems? Yeah, really? That's going to stop your 5-year-old from shooting you in the dick? Bro, this country is so insane with gun violence. Dogs have killed their owners, okay? Dogs. How do you materially solve that problem? We have such an insane country with so much readily available weaponry. This is a country where a dog has killed their owner with a gun in the car. How do you solve that? What kind of mental health complications exist when your 5-year-old picks up your gun and shoots you in the head with it? They don't know what the they're doing. It's ridiculous. And the irony here is that, once again, other countries with comparable rates of mental health problems, other countries with comparable rates of poverty, literally do not have the same level of gun violence. It's that simple. One must ask the question, why? They haven't solved those issues better than America, and yet they still have virtually no gun violence in comparison to the United States of America. What about other countries of similar gun ownership? What? There is no country on this planet, with, I believe, the exception of Yemen, that has a similar rate of gun ownership, and even Yemen does not come near the American rate of gun ownership. There is no country on this planet that has a comparable rate of gun ownership. Like, people talk about I talked about Switzerland earlier. Not even remotely close. No other country comes near that. Look, yeah, Falkland Islands. And then number 3 is Yemen. And in every other country, whether it be Serbia, Montenegro, Canada, Uruguay, Cyprus, Finland, Switzerland, whatever, they all have gun control. No other country has nearly the readily available firearms rating, like the firearms availability per capita rating.
You know, what encapsulates it all in one image is that chart, right? It makes me think of the wealth disparity chart when you look at how much of the wealth is owned by what percentage of the people, right? So the gun chart, for me, says it all in a single picture, but you know, you got to love Hasan. It's a mile a minute and it's all spot on. Man, school shootings, nobody's doing anything. Nobody is doing anything.